So in this screencast, we're going to look at arrays and how we can create and use them within the microbit. So an array is a container that holds a fixed number of items of the same type. So, for example, you can have an array of numbers, you can have an array of strings. Generally, you can't mix the two. So if you have an array of numbers, it would be an array of numbers. So, for example, when we looked at our computational thinking workshops, we looked at the bubble sort and we also looked at the selection. And I used various different lists to show how the bubble sort and selection sort would work. You could put those lists of numbers into an array, and that's normally where you would store them. You'd have them in an array. An example of using an array of strings is, for example, to hold people's names. So, for example, if I wanted to have all of the names of the people in this class, I could have an array with all of your names in there, and that would be an array of strings. Once we have our array created, we can then use an index to access the elements of the array. So, one of the things to be aware of, though, is the index always starts at 0, and that's similar to most programming languages. So that's what's called zero-based indexing. So the first index is 0. So, for example, if we have an array with 10 elements in there, the indices that we would use would be 0 to 9. So 0 would give us what is in the first element, 1 would give us the second element, and so on. And that's just a little bit different to what you might be used to, so just be a little bit careful of that. So we're going to have a look at a project which is going to create an array of numbers and then display those numbers. So we're going to create a new project. In the onStart, which is, remember I said that's where we normally would do our initialization. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to create an array of numbers to hold the values 5, 7, and 9, and those are our values within the array. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at, on a button pressed, we're going to display the value at index 0. Now remember, the value at index 0 is going to be our first element, which is 5. The value at index 1 will be 7, and we're going to display that when the B button is pressed. And finally, the value at index 2 is 9, and we're going to display that when the A and B buttons are pressed together. So let's go to makecode.com now and create this code. So we're here in makecode.com with a new project. And as with all new projects, we have the onStart and the forever. I'm going to get rid of the forever, but I'm going to keep the onStart because I want to create my array on starting up the microbit. So I'm going to create a variable to start off with. So I'm going to make a variable and I'm going to call it list. And I'm going to click OK on that. And then I'm going to set list to. So I need to bring across set item to, change item to list. And then I'm going to go down to advanced here. And within advanced, there's an arrays block. So I'm going to click on arrays. And then I'm going to create, and this time I want to create a numeric array. So I'm going to drag that across. So I'm going to set my list to, and I'm going to create an array now. Now, if you see here, there's a little settings or a gear icon here. If I click on that, I can add in new value. So I can just bring a value and drop it in here. Bring value, because remember we want 3 values here. So I've got 3 values here. So I'm creating my array, and you can see there are 3 little plugs here. So now I have an array with 3 numeric values. What I now need to do is I need to go back to math, and I need to bring across the 0 here and put it into the second plug, and go back again and bring it across again and put it into the third plug. I'm just going to close this up by just clicking on the gear here, and that's now gone. So now I'm creating an array, and in this case all 3 values are 0. I'm just going to change the first 0 to a 5, click on the next 0 and make it a 7, and click on the final 0 and make it a 9. Now I've created an array called list with 3 values, 5, 7, and 9. So that's the first part of what we want to do. So that's our initialization. Now I need to go back, so I'm just going to close up the advanced section here. I'm going to go back to input, and I'm going to say on button A press, so I'm going to bring that one down, and then I want to just go into advanced again and find my arrays. And here I need to show the value at. So I'm going to go back up to basic, because remember I'm showing a number. So just drag across, show number, and then the number I'm going to show is the value that is in the list at 0. So if I click on the A button now, it should show me a 5. If I duplicate that code, so I'm going to duplicate it, drag it down, and I'm going to say on button B pressed, But this time I want to get the value at index 1. And then finally, I'm going to go on, duplicate that again. So button A press was showing index 0, B press was showing index 1, and finally A plus B press, we are going to show the index 2. So let's test and see, does this now work? So we've got the A button, 5 is showing, the B button, 7 is showing, and finally A plus B together, which is this little button here, on the simulator, and it's showing 9. So what we've done in this project is we have created an array with numeric values. We've given the index 0 the value of 5, index 1 the value of 7, and finally index 2 the value of 9. And then we're just accessing them. Now what we'll look at in a couple of weeks' time, or sorry, next week actually, in loops, we'll look at how can we use a loop to process this information. So to start off with, we're just going to go with something basic like this, but then we can look at how we can use loops to process an array. So I'm just going to change the name there, and I'm just going to call it basic array, just so that I know what it is when I come back to it. Remember, as always, when it saves it, it will download that to my downloads folder, or create that in my downloads folder, and then I can copy that across to the microbit. So I'm just going to. So that's our very first project using arrays. We'll look at another project now where we do an alternative for the sorting hat. So in this example, we're going to again use an array, but this time we're going to use an array of strings, and we're going to call it maybe houses or lists. It doesn't really matter what you call it, just as long as you refer to it as that after that. So in this case, we're going to, on start, create an array of strings called list, and we're going to hold the values Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, and I think I can see a typo there. I've spelled Hufflepuff incorrectly, apologies for that. And then what we're going to do, once we've set up our array and initialized it, given it the values, when the microbit is shaken, we're going to pick a random number between 0 and 3, and then we're going to display the string at this index of the array. So this will make our sorting hat code much, much tidier, so we won't have to have all of those if statements within there. So we'll just go to makecode.com now and create this project. So we're here in makecode.com with the new project. I'm going to get rid of my forever block because I don't need it. I'm going to keep my on start because when I start I want to initialize my array or set up my array. So I'm going to go to variables, I'm going to make a variable, and I'm going to call it houses. Okay on that. And then I want to set houses to, and I'm going to click a little array in there. So I'm going to drag across, set item to 0. I am going to click on the down arrow and change item to houses. And then I'm going to go to the advanced section again and go to arrays. If I click on arrays, I'm creating an array of string values. So here I've got create array and I've got 2 string values. I'm going to click on the little gear or the settings here, and I'm going to pull across value. So it's giving me a 3rd value, and one more time give me a 4th value. So now I've got an array with 4 plugs here to give me 4 different string values. Now I can get rid of the gear here because I don't need it anymore. And now I need to get a text here. So if I go to text in this advanced block, you'll see here I can pull across the text and drop it in there. And then I can just go here again and pull across the text where I can duplicate the previous one. So now I've got an array with 4 values. So I'm going to put in Gryffindor. I'm going to put in Hufflepuff. I am going to put in Ravenclaw. And finally, I'm going to put in. So that's my array initialized. And now we need to create a random number. So I'm going to go to basic, because remember we're going to do this on shake. So basic, sorry, input on shake. I'm going to create a variable. So make a variable here. Click OK on that. And then I'm going to set house to. And
I'm going to pick a random number from 0. Now, instead of 0 to 4, I'm going to go 0 to 3. So if a 0 comes up, it's going to print out Gryffindor. If a 1, it's going to print out Hufflepuff. If a 2, it's going to print out Ravenclaw. So we need to show the value of that array. So we're going to go to Input and on Shake. So when we shake the microbit, we want to create a variable called housenum. We're going to go to Variables. And we're going to make a variable. We're going to call it housenum. Then I'm going to set housenum to. So I'm going to change housenum. And I'm going to set it equal to, and I'm going to pick a random number between 0. Instead of 4, we're going to make it 3 because we just want 4 values. So 0 is going to be Gryffindor, 1 is going to be Hufflepuff, 2 is going to be Ravenclaw, and 3 is going to be Slytherin. So now that we have that, so we have our house number, and now the last thing that needs to be done is to show the string, and then go into arrays again. And I'm going to list get value at. So instead of list, I need to make it houses here because we want the whatever the value within the houses array. And then get value at, I'm going to go back to variables here. I'm going to get the value at housenum. So if I shake it, it's giving me Slytherin. Need to wait for that to finish. And if I shake it again, I'm getting Ravenclaw. Now again, maybe we might look at our array in future, and instead of having, so we've got Gryffindor here, instead of having the full name of the house, maybe just show the first letter like we did in the previous example of the sorting hat. We've got Slytherin again. Just try again to see if we get Hufflepuff. But it is random, so it's going to come up at different times. And there's Hufflepuff. So we have all of our 4 values. So this is being picked randomly. So this is just another version of the sorting hat, and this time we're using an array. So I'm just going to name it here. I'm going to name it sorting hat. But I'm going to call it sorting hat array, just so that I can distinguish between it and the version that we had with the if statement. So you can see this is a much tidier piece of code, but it is a little bit trickier. So just have a look at it and see if you can replicate it. Hope you found this useful.